Makindi House was to be the last and final terror target for the night. It was here where a bag containing explosives was discovered at the corner in the restaurant. The explosives never took off, opening one of the largest manhunts for the terror suspect in Uganda, Tanzania and Kenya. But Kenya was the first stop. What was meant to be the third and final target in Kampala turned out to be the first clue for investigators now on the hunt of faceless men in the wake of the worst terror attacks in East Africa after those carried out in Kenya and Tanzania over a decade ago. 3 explosions had killed 76 people at 2 locations. The failure of the 4th device at the Makindi House was to be the break that will lead police to those behind the attack. The inside story learned that for at least one day, security officials in Uganda had no idea of what had hit them.
If they want to fight, they should go and look for soldiers, not to come and target people who are just enjoying themselves.
What Yoweri Kaguta Museveni was not telling a tense Kampala population was that hours early security apparatus had informed him that the bombings was the work of Al-Shabaab, a Somalia-based group that enjoys support the international terror organization Al-Qaeda. Immediately after the attacks, a telephone call from the White House informed Kampala that the Federal Bureau of Investigations was willing to lend a hand. Not long after, the Israeli Secret Service Mossad also offered to help track down those behind the attacks. Another quiet call was made to Harambee House from Uganda, and 2 days later, the FBI, the Mossad and Kenyan security apparatus had set up base in Kampala. Their first break came from a discovery by Tembo Joseph, a waiter at a popular restaurant in Kampala.
And I saw the burger there. Then I called my fellow worker, one of my fellow workers. And the customer left the bag on the table. You go and pick it, and you kept it. So my fellow worker came and picked it.
The bag Tembo found was the unexploded suicide vest that Haruma Luyima had placed at Makindi House with a mobile phone attached to the explosives as a trigger mechanism. Repeated calls from the phone of the terror suspects failed to set off the device.
You saw a phone wiring on the wire.
When authorities recovered it, they found phone numbers on the mobile phone. 2 no longer active and 1 linked to a phone in Uganda. At that time, it was switched off. The last one, however, was still active. A telephone call to Nairobi 3 days later jolted authorities into action. Investigators wanted the man behind the 4th mobile phone, which was beaming its signal from Makueni district in eastern Kenya. Kenya, Uganda and American investigators made their way to the quiet, dusty town of Tawa in Makueni with a van full of powerful satellite tracking equipment. On 16th of July, they had their first suspect, Mohamed Ado, a hawker going about his normal business. Mohamed was ferried to Nairobi for interrogation, and he soon led them to a retail shop in the city's Isili area, where the hawker claimed to have bought the phone. In his plea, they picked a shop owner who claimed to have bought the phone from a man police were later to identify as Hanif, the mastermind of the Kampala bombing. The handset recovered in Tawa gave up another crucial lead to investigators. An inquiry had been made from the phone 2 months before the Kampala bombing to an SMS information service offered by an electricity generating company. Investigators tracked down the electricity account to a house in Mlolongo, 15 minutes drive from the Nairobi city center. A knock on the door at midnight and the police had their second suspect, Hussein Agadi. His expectant wife, Nadifa, was also picked up for questioning. According to police, Agadi had been in Kampala in February and June, and most recently in July, just 8 days before the explosions. Based on his testimony and mobile phone records, police embarked on another manhunt. Idris Magondu had worked at Paradise Hotel in Kampala and left just before its bombing in 2002. His whereabouts had remained unknown ever since. Now investigators learned he had moved to Nairobi with his family and set up residence in the city's Kawangware area. Idris was quickly arrested by Kenyan police officers. Back in Uganda, the Ugandan mobile phone that had been switched off was still being tracked down. Records of past calls showed that the handset had been used in Yamasuba area, just a kilometer away from one of the blasts. Police closed in on a house in the area and arrested Idris Nzubuga. Police found his mobile phone in a pit latrine, along with some electric cables. They soon concluded that the house in Nanjang, Kubi, was the central meeting point. This is where the bombs were kept. Kilometers away, however, was another team of investigators. 6 days into the explosions, the international team that knew no borders was working round the clock. A mobile handset was beaming a signal from another house in the area. But by the time they got there, a man, a brother to one of the terror suspects, had already left the country. The investigators had to cross borders. Mombasa town was their next stop on the trail of Issa Luyima.
I brought my brother Hassan on board and Idris. Maybe they were manipulated, they had trust in me, so they couldn't refuse the rose that I was to give them.
He held me by the shoulder and looked me straight in the eye and told me in Luganda, Sebo, this is a call and you have to respond.
Somalia watu wengi wamekufa. Hii ni mnasema 75 ni kidogo bana.
On the Trail of Terror continues tomorrow. Dennis Onsarigo for the Inside Story.